Hello, and welcome back to the No Filter Just Faith podcast. I'm so excited today to be joined by two special guests. We have Father Kim and Sister Mary Ann. They're both from Franciscan orders that we'll learn more about today, but thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's
You're
a
very
joy.
welcome.
Do you want to share the official title of your orders just so that I don't mess it up?
Sure. So I'm Sister Mary Ann Spanjers. I'm a member of the Franciscan Sisters of Christian Charity. Our mother house is in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, so just a little bit north.
Cool.
Stay close to the lake and
Yes.
you'll get there.
Of course. What about you, Father Kim?
My name is actually Father Joachim,
Okay.
and my nickname is Kim Studwell, and I'm a Franciscan friar, Order of Friars Minor, the newly formed province of Our Lady Guadalupe, and I live a little further south than Sister. I live outside of Milwaukee, just south of Milwaukee, in a town called Franklin.
Okay, very cool. And so you guys have hit the road to give a presentation on Franciscan Eucharistic spirituality, which is so wonderful. We'll be hearing from you both tonight. But so what made you want to find young adult communities and share this presentation?
I was in a time of transition, and our leadership, our administration, asked if I would be interested and willing to work with our vocation director, Sister Julianne, which she's a very good friend, so that was an easy yes, and with an emphasis on outreach to young adults and to help the young adults grow closer to the Lord, and also to help them get to know the Franciscan message and get to know who we are as Franciscan sisters, who the friars are, and to work to do this with the friars is just a double blessing. I think it gives a clearer picture of the Franciscan life.
Yeah. And so can we jump into what is the Franciscan life? How would you define that?
I'm not sure you can define. We happened to work in vocation ministry at the same time several years ago, and maintained a friendship since then. And both come from different Franciscan traditions. The friars were what we call first order, not in order of importance, but in order of foundation, because
Okay.
we claim 1209 as our foundation, with St. Francis having received verbal permission from the then Pope Innocent III.
Huh.
The thing is that what we're doing, and I think it continues from being a vocation director, is trying to do what your job is in many ways, evangelization,
Yeah.
and sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. That's really what it is to be a Franciscan, is a particular school of thought, a particular way of living for the Lord Jesus and sharing his good news, sharing his gospel. Our rules of life, basically to observe the holy gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. And that's what we try to do.
I think, as Father said, the Franciscan life is the gospel life, and I bring that we bring that out in the presentation. The other particular Franciscan way of living is from one's heart.
Okay.
For St. Francis, it was all about the heart and the relationship with the Father, with Jesus, through the Holy Spirit from one's heart. And that is where God speaks to us. And that response of the heart of for the beauty of creation, as we anticipate St. Francis Day, for relationships, the importance of seeing each other from one's heart and not just analytically or acquaintance, but that we are truly brothers and sisters.
Right. And so what is a characteristic of anybody or any life lived within a Franciscan order? Is there, like, I know with some religious orders, there's a lot of silence, or there's a lot of focus on community. Like, what would some of the focuses of Franciscan orders be?
The first thing that comes to mind is joy.
I love that.
We are called to share the joy of the gospel. We are called to share the joy of community, to share the joy of being in love with God. You were asking some wonderful questions that are part of the presentation.
Good.
And yes, as Franciscans, we are not a cloistered community. We do not have silence as part of the schedule of the day, if you will, because we are to be relational, and it is about bringing God's love and God's message into the world. So our life is very intertwined with service. It's and you'll hear this in the presentation. I love the line in our Franciscan Sisters of Christian Charity Constitution. It says, "Our life is rooted in prayer, and our prayer is rooted in life." And so the foundation of our day is beginning with prayer and with the liturgy of the word and the Eucharist together. And then the day is focused on whatever service, whatever ministry God has called us to.
Right. Wow. And so I know tonight's presentation, we're focusing on the Eucharist. How does the Eucharist play into this life as a Franciscan?
For the friars, our experience is that the Second Vatican Council emphasized that the Eucharist is the source and summit of our life. And I would say that's pretty what we do, who we are. We begin our day with the celebration of Mass. We begin all that we do. One of the things for our particular house, because each house has its own schedule, has its own style. And in our house, we have, on Friday afternoons, we have Eucharistic adoration for a period of time that leads us into evening prayer. So we are a bit more, if you will, a bit more contemplative. In that regards, we're not silent, I assure you. We're not silent. But we do try to focus on that.
Yeah.
As I said, every house is different. They're not going to be, you have 5 different Franciscan friars' houses, you're going to have 5 different ways of living our way of life. Part of it is guided by or shaped by the particular apostolate or ministries that the friars may be engaged in. So that would be one thing, is that we celebrate the Eucharist together, and we strive to pray together, like I said, at the beginning of our day.
Yeah, that's great. And what about the Sisters of Christian Charity? How does the Eucharist, how is that central to your order?
In many ways, the same. We begin our day with the celebration of the Eucharist, with morning prayer, lauds, and then the Eucharist. We too, and I'm blessed right now to be living at our mother house, which is a wonderful opportunity. And the mother house we have adoration every Wednesday, and then we have a day of adoration, morning of adoration the first Sundays.
Yeah.
But then too, in the local convents, we will usually have holy hours, usually on Sundays, because those are the days we're not involved in ministry.
Yeah.
So the Eucharist is central to who we are. And I love, we do a lot of outreach with different age groups, and sometimes with the younger students, I'll ask them a question and say, so what is the name of the house where sisters live in? And, somebody will come up with the convent. And I said, so what makes that house different than the house you live in? And well, sisters live there. And I said, but we have a chapel. We have Jesus right in our house, and we pray with Jesus, and we sleep in the same building that Jesus is in. And so the importance of the Eucharist is central. And I think it stems, of course, from our relationship with the Lord, and Francis's strong desire to be as close to Jesus as possible, and his imitation of Christ and his desire to be one with Christ. He had a deep love for the Eucharist and for time of silence as well as time of service.
Yeah.
And the Eucharist present in the body of Christ, in the people we serve. That's the other Franciscan gospel, which is everyone's spirituality in the Catholic Church, is the gospel, as to see Christ and witness Christ through the other, especially those in need.
Yeah.
If I may,
Please.
one of the things that I enjoy sharing about St. Francis of Assisi and others in the Franciscan tradition, the Dominicans and the Servites and other groups were founded for a particular reason, whether it was for preaching or if it was for education. The Jesuits, for example, were founded for mission and for renewal of the church, especially at the post-Council of Trent. Before that, but especially afterwards. St. Francis never intended that. I mean, he never intended to found a community. He wanted to live the gospel of Jesus, and it came through a really difficult, and that's going to come up in the course of our sharing tonight, but it came out of a real difficulty in his life, real trauma. And so he separated himself from what he had been doing beforehand. And as a result, he began to shift in a very different direction of life. So much so that he became, we would call it contemplative.
Yeah.
Not so much the silent part, but he needed to get in touch with his heart. Something that a sister had been talking about, really very much of the heart. And it was out of that experience that he begins to pray at a tumble-down chapel called San Damiano, which will be featured in our reflection tonight, but also his encounter with lepers. And he wasn't the only one doing this, but it was something that he did. And it wasn't something that he was like, I am now going to do this. It was through encounter. And that's really where you begin to see, everybody, begin to see the whole Franciscan ethos is really through encounter.
Yeah.
Encounter with the poor. Encounter with the Lord in prayer. And it was in a tumble-down chapel. It wasn't in a very nice church.
Right.
And you go on and on with this encounter. And then people began to say, well, this guy's serious about the gospel. I want to do what he's doing.
Yeah.
That's what attracted Claire. That's what attracted other people,
Yeah.
even those who didn't become friars or sisters, that they wanted to follow Jesus, and they saw something very real and very tangible in what this little man was doing.
Right. Wow. That is so cool. Yeah. St. Francis has been, we've been hearing his name lately in our church announcements because soon we have the St. Francis Blessing of the Pets on his feast day next week. So that's exciting. Or this Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah. So that's very exciting. But I like St. Francis, I know his story is he was a young person and lived a very privileged life and then kind of turned away from all that to follow Jesus more closely.
Because of, as Father said, of trauma. But, well, it was his own ego. He wanted to even, he was the life of the party. He must have been very charismatic and lots of friends. And he loved spending his father's money. And, but then
on himself and his friends.
Right.
Of course.
Right.
And then he wanted to be even more famous. And it was during the Middle Ages and the time of city-states. And they were against each other, warring, and so against Perugia. And Father Kim has a much better explanation of the whole historical part. But in the end, he wants to become a knight.
Wow.
Because he thinks then he'll even be more esteemed and he'll get into a higher class because his father was in the merchant class. And even though he had a lot of money, he was not in the high class.
Okay.
And he was a lousy knight because he was captured in one of the first battles and in prison for a year and had to be ransomed from prison by his father. And we really don't know why his father took a year to pay for his ransom. And through that becomes very disillusioned, very ill. They think TB perhaps was what he contracted.
Wow.
And life isn't the same anymore. And so he starts wandering around and to this, and he finds this broken down chapel and this crucifix in the chapel of San Damiano. And starts praying, what do you want from me, God? What am I supposed to do with my life? Nothing has meaning anymore. And we don't know how many times he did that, how many
Yeah.
times he went to that chapel, and how many times he prayed. But at one point, Father, you tell it really well.
Well, he is praying, and one of the things that happens as he's praying, what the biographers tell us, is that he hears Jesus speaking through the crucifix. One biographer says the lips moved. I don't know about that, but he hears the Lord speaking to him through the crucifix. Francis, go rebuild my church, which you see is falling into ruins. And he looks around, and sure enough, church is falling apart. So he begins a church rebuilding campaign. Of course, in order to do that, you have to have money. And who had money? Dad. Dad was not happy with this. And it leads to a number of things happening. But he begins with his own hands to physically rebuild Santa Miana, which will end up becoming the home of St. Clare and her sisters. And he ends up rebuilding 3 churches in that area,
Right.
2 of which survive. And part of this whole thing is, in his rebuilding, he's just following a simple directive. Go rebuild my church. That's what he saw.
Yeah.
It's not until much later that he begins to realize it was more than mortar and stone. It was people. It was people.
Wow.
There's a great gap in the church at the time in the Middle Ages, which unfortunately, I think we're reflecting that in
Yeah.
the church also, in the world, in our society, between the rich and the poor, those who have and those who have not. And so Francis becomes aligned with the poor, with the lepers, with the outcasts, with the other, and brings the gospel alive.
Wow.
And it wasn't out of ideology. It was based upon encounter. I mean, he's hearing the gospel, and he's trying to respond to it. I mean, he makes mistakes. But as he's doing it, this is where he has an encounters, I would say plural, with lepers. And that is very significant in changing his orientation in life, because he discovers, these are my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And this is how he aligns himself with those who are minores, the lesser. And he adopts that as the name of his community.
Yeah.
We're the Order of Lesser Brothers, the Order of Friars Minor.
And that becomes his ministry.
Wow.
It's not just an encounter once with a leper that he was so afraid of, but it becomes what his life is oriented to do, is taking care of
Yeah.
those that no one else wanted to take care of.
Wow. And so then when did it start to grow? Or when did he start to really...
He dies at the age of 44.
44.
Yeah, he's born in 1182, dies in 1226. Next year we're going to be celebrating the 800th anniversary
Wow.
of his passing.
Wow.
But he's 44 years old, and at the time of his death, and he begins around 25. So he's 24, 25. So 1209 is when he receives the permission. My math isn't so good, but he's about 27 at the time.
Yeah.
It begins to grow exponentially.
Wow.
By the time he dies, I think there are 5,000 friars in Europe.
Wow.
Yeah,
Really?
and they're in England. His fame spread in such a way. It's not exactly all roses with this.
Yes, sure. For sure.
There's difficulties, but it really did. It spread.
Yeah.
And many legends grew up around St. Francis of Assisi. But the major thing is that he sees himself as brother. And he'll refer to himself as little brother, Brother Francis, little Brother Francis. And for those who aren't aware, he was never a priest. He may have been a deacon. There's questions about whether or not he was. But he was a cleric, so he could preach publicly. He was given that permission. But you mentioned that he was privileged, and that's an excellent perspective, because he renounces privilege. He was a commoner. He renounces the privilege that he had. Claire was an aristocrat. who was highly privileged, who renounced it.
Yeah.
Who renounced that privilege. And that caused quite a stir in her family. And then when her younger sister joined her, that even created a bigger stir within the
Wow.
family. Eventually, after her father died, her mother joined her. It really became quite the family affair.
Wow.
But but the thing was, the attraction was, this is possible. Living the gospel is not an ideal up there, or some kind of abstract. You mentioned abstract before. It's not something that it's very concrete.
Yeah.
And maybe it involves washing the wounds of lepers.
Right. Wow. That is such an amazing life lived, a short life lived, but look at the impact that still takes place today. And it's so interesting that he was, chasing fame and all this success, and he thought that being a knight would get him there, but the fame that he has now and the legacy that he's left on is, lasting 800 years. And wow, that is so amazing. Wow. So good. So as people who are in Franciscan religious orders, what part of you were like when you first started discerning this vocation? How did that look like? What initially attracted you to this lifestyle?
That's and I bring that out a little bit in the reflection as well. I think the one thing that continues to grow within me is the freedom of the Franciscan lifestyle, the freedom to be myself, the freedom to encounter others, the freedom of wandering, being mendicants, of going in different places and being sent to different missions, and being able to enter into people's lives that I never ever would have dreamt of doing. So that's something that's within me. But I often say, in again sharing vocation story with many different groups, I discovered shortly, while I was in formation, so postulancy, novitiate, I was a Franciscan all my life. I think the way that I connect with God through the beauty of nature, I think growing up on a small farm, I think growing up with immigrant parents, and our community is that. Our community started in the North Woods of Wisconsin, and I was blessed to have our sisters in grade school and then in high school, and they were very down-to-earth, fun sisters to be with.
Yeah.
There was nothing strange or distant or withdrawn about them. They were very approachable, and I think I found that very enticing.
Yeah.
And then going to a retreat with other young women and discovering other young women also looking at this kind of life.
Right.
It just helped me see that this is possible.
Yeah.
And we were talking on the way down with our novice here is with us tonight, and Sister Rose, and we're blessed with many sisters that are retired now and that are older, and in our mother house we have 24-hour nursing care for our elderly sisters. We don't have anyone in a nursing home, which is a blessing, and she was sharing how she enjoys being with the older sisters, and I said, it's helped me as well, because you see a wonderful life lived.
Yeah.
Sisters that have given their whole life to the Lord, and in our community, in our immigrant oriented rural community.
Yeah.
And they're happy, and they're joyful, and you see it's possible.
Yeah.
And I just think that there's such a blessing for us and for the young women that come to our mother house and that are discerning, to see it's possible. It's possible to do this with your life. I think that's why, as Father said, Francis attracted so many people.
Right.
You are able to live freely. You are able to give your whole heart and your life to God with others, and become something part of something much larger than yourself because God's doing the work through you.
Right. Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I love what you said, like clearly that the main characteristic of being a Franciscan is joy. And so that's so like apparent just being with you all is that it's a joyful life. I love that. What
Thank
about
you.
you, Father Kim?
I I did not know any Franciscan friars growing up.
Mhm.
I had a cousin who was a third order regular friar, who's deceased now. He was a missionary in India. I only knew about that. He was my mom's first cousin. And it was very exotic, I mean, tell you. It was, like, oh, India. And was a missionary there, and then he came back to the States, was in Brazil for a while, then came back to the States. I did not know him well. I don't know if I ever remember seeing him in a Franciscan habit.
Mm.
He didn't wear this habit, he had a different one. But I tell people, I believe God speaks to us with what attracts us.
Mm.
My scriptural image of that is Moses in the burning bush. Moses minding his own business, thank you very much. And he sees this, what's that up there? And it attracts him, and he goes, and he's curious, and he finds out, and his life changes, and the children of Israel, their life changes.
Yeah.
I think very similarly, what attracts us is God speaks to us through that. So whether it's liturgy, for me, music, smell of incense and candles and all that kind of stuff as a kid, I really got into as and I felt safe in church. That was a place that I felt safe. But I enjoyed music, and that was part of it, just a part of it. The other thing was the habit. I saw pictures of the habit, and I was attracted. I can't tell you why. There was something about it. It's like, that's cool. That's different. That's very different.
Yeah.
And it's brown.
Awesome.
It isn't black. It isn't severe. It's brown. And again, that's a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. But it's something that was as a kid. But then learning about the life of St. Francis and his love for Jesus. And that spoke very deeply into my life. And I would agree. I did, what was a Franciscan? I didn't know. But I was attracted to that since before I even met a friar. And so it was a happy coming together for me. My father, I get choked up. At his funeral, I had said, my dad is the one who taught me how to be a friend. A Franciscan friar. Because of the difficulties he went through, but he had a real heart for the poor. And I share some of that in the course of the presentation. But he did, and and it wasn't anything that it was splashy. It was really kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know about it until I happened upon it. I happened to be in a place where I saw him taking care of people as an eye doctor. He did house calls in rural Western Pennsylvania, where I grew up, outside of Pittsburgh. There, we had coal miners, and many of whom suffered from black lung, and several of them were his patients. And I saw how he did that. And when he and my mom both helped me understand about the plight of people who suffered.
Yeah.
And so when I heard the story of St. Francis and how he responded, it was like, this is a very real way. This is something like, this is how Jesus did. I mean, he came upon encounter, one after the other, where healing this blind person or this person who's struggling with that or whatever the individual may have been suffering from.
Yeah.
He responded, and he was with them. And I said, that's what I want.
Yeah.
I often tell my students, I've been a teacher most of my life, and I think I'm one of the most free people on earth. And I think and I know it's because of this relationship with Jesus that is the grounding of who I am. And so it doesn't, the rest fills in that. And so I think I see in many young adults, and I know we'll get to that probably soon, but the the hope that young adults give me in the church today is their desire and their commitment to grow closer to God.
Yeah.
And I've experienced this across the country because we've been privileged to do this in many different parts of the country, out east, out west, in California, in Wisconsin, and in different Texas. And we were at a retreat with some young adults. I think it was in Texas. And anyway, it was about hope. And they were sharing with each other what gives them hope. And I was just walking around and listening. And one of the young adults said, "Sister, what gives you hope?" And I said, "You all give me hope."
Yeah.
The young adults of today, I think, are a quiet power. I don't know, power is not a great word, but a quiet influence, movement, leaven in the church and in our world. And I just see you growing and see the desire and the commitment growing for encounter with God and living in a different way that isn't the direction of our society sometimes.
This is what I love that you said that your emphasis on freedom, because I think that's what so many young people are chasing, and they wouldn't assume that living a life with Christ results in freedom in any capacity, as a member of a religious order, as just someone who practices their faith. I don't think that people from the outside, or maybe people who have left the faith, they think, oh, I had to leave because of the rules, I didn't align with this or that, and so it's almost like a lack of freedom that they feel. But a true life lived in Christ has so much freedom, because you're just, the weights and the burdens of the world and life that weigh you down are just kind of taken away, or he carries them for us. And so
I like that. He carries them for us because they're still very present.
Yes.
And we still have to encounter them and deal with the struggles and the expenses and everything. But and we'll bring this out tonight. The point is, where is your heart? Where is your heart centered? And if your heart is centered on God, the rest of your life will do the same.
Right.
And then the struggles and the challenges and the sin that affects us all will have a different focus, because the focus will be on God and on his love and his compassion and his strength in our lives. And then it's not on me and my own success and my own having to do all this or to follow the rules. When it becomes following rules, it's not God.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I love that you said that, because I do think that identity is something that young people are constantly trying to figure out what their identity is, and, how does this all fit in? But I've experienced so much freedom when I've, turned to the Lord and just found my identity in him.
Yes.
And so that is what, is so beautiful about our faith, and that I'm so grateful for. And I know, I see that in the two of you and the joy that this life brings. So thank you so much for sharing. One question that I like to ask all of my guests is, what is something right now that is fueling your faith? So it could be a book that you're reading, or a podcast, or maybe a prayer that you've been turning to recently, but just something that you might recommend to our listeners that they can incorporate into their faith practices.
Okay.
And it can be simple. I know you guys do a lot every day, but it could be, previously people would share a book, or maybe they're doing a daily rosary.
For me, one of the things that fuels my faith is, there's several. It's prayer. It's my fraternity. And when I say fraternity, I'm talking about the brothers with whom I live. They might be surprised to hear this, but they really do. I'm what is called the guardian. That's our lingo for the local superior, but more of a servant, they hope, to be able to model that. But my brothers, I feel very blessed with the brothers with whom I live.
Thank you.
There's so many things. I have to echo what Father Kim said. My prayer every day in the silence with a cup of coffee and the scriptures, and then joining my sisters in prayer and joining my sisters on the road. I enjoy traveling a lot, and Sister Julianne and I are going to be hitting the road and going out west in another 2 weeks.
So awesome.
And to do that with a good friend as well as a fellow sister, and then the destination is some of our convents, so that's always wonderful to reconnect.
Well, thank you both for being here with us today and for giving a wonderful presentation tonight. I'm looking forward to it. So I'll make sure to link your websites and everything in case everybody has any questions or they want to reach out. But thank you so much for being here. It was so much fun.
Oh,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Elise.